So it is actually really hard for me to talk about this movie because I think a lot of you clicked on this hoping to hear me talk about it negatively, and a lot of you are clicking on it to hear me talk about it positively, and that's exactly what this movie was talking about, that a lot of people will believe whatever they want to believe regardless of what anyone says to them. And that was so poignant, and I thought, wow, we're operating at a really sophisticated level in this part two of Wicked. So let's put on our smart glasses and start at the beginning. We're going to do what was really good, some questions that I have, which I want you to answer because I know we have some mega fans, and then also some people who might also be confused about similar things, and then things that I wish that they improved. Again, I love the Wicked franchise. If you have been following me for a while, you know that they also watched my reaction and they put it in their audience reaction. So I've created a lot of Wicked content here. You could check out a lot of it. They unfortunately did not invite me to the premiere, which is really interesting because, like Elphaba, it made me feel used and forgotten because clearly they know I exist and I have made a lot of content for Wicked, and then they were like, "You don't get an invite to the premiere." So no shade because I understand that they're a mega corporation, but when you have 6,000 people attending your premiere in New York City, and I'm in New York City, and you've used my stuff to promote your brand, I just think that maybe there should have been an invite. But besides that, let's start talking about the movie. What was really good about the movie is, of course, our shining two leads, Ariana Grande, Cynthia Erivo, both of them stellar. Regardless of what happened around them, you knew that these two women have exactly the story in their mind and they are acting through everything. Regardless of the bumps and the hurdles and the obstacles, which do happen from the story and from potentially the script and songs, we'll get into that. You know, you and I are going to have a really good conversation now. But Cynthia and Ariana, A plus, no notes for them. The other thing that was really beautiful is, let me go check my notes because I actually took a lot. Ah, yes. The social commentary was really spicy. We're going to do glasses down for this because the second the wizard gets on screen, what does he say? Elphaba says, "You gotta tell everyone the truth." And he said, "But why?" And she said, "Because the truth is the truth." And he says, "Well, it doesn't matter what I tell them." And she said, "What?" It literally does because it's the truth. Her whole mission from the start of the movie, and again, we were racing. Like, no moment was taken. I don't know how much time passed between Act 1 and Act 2. It could have been a day, it could have been 75 years. Like, no timeline was given, except the cub is now a full lion. But other than that, we just started swinging through, Elphaba's flying in the sky, and she's saying, "Our wizard lies," and Madame Morrible's like, "Everyone look over there!" And she changes the clouds to say, "Oz dies," or something like that. I don't remember. But so she finally says, "You know what? If everyone just knew the truth," which I think a lot of us can resonate with, if people just knew the truth, then they would believe it. So she goes to the wizard and she says, "You need to come clean." And he says, "It doesn't really matter." And I, like Elphaba, was like, are you insane? Are you out of your mind? Because that doesn't make any sense. And he sings a whole song called Wonderful. And essentially he talks about what it's like to be a trickster, what it's like to manipulate people. And he said there are people in this world who just choose to believe whatever they want to believe. They've already decided in their hearts, he tells Elphaba. They already believe in me. They want to believe in me. It's almost like this concept of the followers and the leaders, the sheep and the shepherd. People want to believe in someone, so they will believe the wizard. Even if the wizard said, "I've been a liar," they're going to say, "No, it couldn't be. He could never. Not my wizard. I would never. He would never. It couldn't happen." And that was really powerful because I was like, "Oh, are we? Is this escapism into the world of Oz, or am I just living the reality? Because I didn't sign up for this." But it was really interesting that they chose to take that perspective, which is in the script organically. So A plus for that. Um, Speaking of sophistication, y'all, there was one moment, glasses go up for this, because when Elphaba and, not Elphaba, when Glinda and Fiero are gonna get married, there's something really spicy that happens. I don't know if you're gonna catch it, but I was really appreciating the subtle symbolism. Ariana, or Glinda, walking down the marriage aisle, everyone there is just, oh my gosh, giddy gaga goo goo goo, but they were cutting back and forth, and again, this is what happens when you have direction and a vision and editors all coming together and communicating. This is such a strong point in the movie that they had Elphaba walking through a similar aisle, but seeing the caged animals around her. And we know that those animals are not just caged, they've lost the ability to speak. they've lost their voices. So as they cut back and forth, I don't know if they meant this, but I totally got the sense that they were referring to the people watching Glinda's wedding as also being animals who've lost their voice. What happens when you just take the rhetoric given to you, you're spoon-fed a story, and you just consume it? This whole like concept of consumerism. It's like, oh, I just want to believe this. Let me just take this reality that I've been told. So the animals are suffering, and we're seeing that visceral, like more introspective or inner calamity, while the external part is everyone thinks that they're happy. And it was just a beautiful, striking duality. And I said, wow, we're operating today. We ain't no surgeons, but, skitty gaga. I don't know what that means. That's the sound effects of going into the body. I would know, I'm a physician. Oh, and then it got really. The movie did this a lot of times emotionally, like the roller coaster of it all wasn't necessarily an even roller coaster. When you're like, oh, there's a loop coming. No, you don't know you're in a loop until you're upside down and you're like, oh, I feel nauseous. Like, I was not prepared for this. So, a little bumpy. I'll tell you a little bit more about why in a second. But one moment that was a very welcome bumpy was when they fought each other. We had a full-on just battle, which I don't even know if you could say it was a battle because it was very uneven. One person was totally winning that battle. But it was odd because when it happened, I gasped. And some other people in the audience did too. It's kind of like for any musical theater people out there, the Hadestown gasp. Yeah, totally me. I didn't know what was happening in Hadestown. Don't know the story at all. As it was happening, I was like, this is so amazing. Yes. Yes. And then the moment happened, and in a room of people in tuxedos, I went, I later learned it's now termed the gasp. So that was me in Hadestown and here. Because something happened on screen, and I was like, are you kidding me? We're going there? And it was physical. It was like a physical assault. And they were duking it out. I'm not going to tell you exactly how it happened, but you start feeling this tension, which then morphs into comedy based on how they were actually fighting, but it's not even-handed because one clearly has superpowers, the other one doesn't. And then it's immediately switched into anguish and misery and distraught, and you're like, what? I just felt 4 different flavors of emotions in 2 minutes, and I don't think I deserve to feel all of them or any of them because I feel like I'm insulting the people on screen. Which maybe is the point of it, to make the whole movie feel very emotionally, like you're truly like an emotional minefield. You'll understand when you see it. Oh, and what caused that moment? What caused the altercation between our heroines? Literally the thing that I called out when I watched Wizard of Oz. As someone who's never seen the movie, when I watched it the first time, I said, something's up about this Glinda character. And a lot of y'all agreed with me. And a lot of y'all were like, no, you're seeing things. The movie clocked it. Wicked Part 2 came in and said, let's rectify this. And when they did, it became a physical altercation. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. Glinda, I clocked you from second one. Oh, another thing I really liked was the Girl in the Bubble concept. That's Ariana Grande's new song. It's Glinda's new song. That was visually mesmerizing. I don't want to ruin it for you. As it's happening, you sort of get just transported into a magical realm. It truly is an inner reflection that is visually told beautiful. I loved that number because they could have done a little too much with it, but they didn't. They had the exact amount of reflection, and I just thought it was beautiful. The song itself, I liked where it landed in the story. I felt like it was emotionally earned, especially because, again, we're doing this emotionally. It's almost as if when we started the movie, it was check boxes of trying to get through all the characters where they are, let's catch up with them, and then song, 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 song. But each song was its own soundstage, soundstage, soundstage. You never really got establishing shots. But when we finally got to the song where Ariana's gonna sing The Bubble, A Girl in a Bubble, she literally does this. The Tin Man is down in the ground, or I guess the city square, throwing a hissy fit. Truly anger at 1,000. Enraged this man is. And he looks up at Glinda and she goes, "Ooh, no, thank you." She goes inside her room and goes into the doors and closes the doors. And from that moment, she took 45 seconds, and it was so needed. And that's what I think this movie I'll comment on that in a second. But she took 45 seconds at the door to just. And she just breathed. And she took her moment. And that was so needed. Because up until that point, we were spinning through. It's like, we have how much time? 2 hours? No, we can't. All right, squeeze it all together. This movie needed to be 3 hours to really flesh out things, but I don't know who made the decision that we can't do another 3 hours, so they just squeezed it, so it feels very rushed, but I'm so glad that they took a moment to just prepare us for this very introspective song, which talks about popping your reality, popping the bubble. It's an odd word to land on. The song would sing and then she'd go, and then I pop. But pop is a hard word to end your song on. And I thought maybe they were trying to say pop instead of like burst or whatever your bubble. She said pop because I thought they were trying to refer to what? Popular. So I was trying to listen for, maybe it's there very subtly, a musical motif of popular. And that's why her bubble needs to pop. And at the very end, she's face to face with her bubble, and I'm just like, yes, pop it. Pop it. Are we not going to pop the bubble? We literally just sang 4 minutes about this. So she didn't pop the bubble, and she just turned away. And I said, is this like functionally leaving the gas on overnight? She just left her bubble on? What? I don't know who made that call, but some moments really took you out of the movie. But that one, despite the bubble not popping and her singing about popping it, I really like the number. Ooh, as for Elphaba's new song, No Place Like Home, here's what I'm going to say about it. Again, in the checkboxes of like, where is Fiyero? Where is Nessa? And all this stuff, you finally get to Elphaba, or actually not Elphaba, you get to the animals, and the animals are like, nah, we out of here, we ain't playing this, we've been through this before, no, not going to happen. So they're all escaping, and as they're escaping, they're on the yellow brick road, and they sort of like dug an underground, and I was like, I want to go in there, can the camera please go in there? I want to know like what's happening. Where are the foxes going? But no, we didn't do that. We just had a camera inside looking at Elphaba outside, and she's like, no, don't leave, guys, and guess who shows up? Dulcibert. And when she comes in, they hug and the camera spins around them and Elphaba starts crying and they play the music from her childhood, except none of that happened. She sees Dulcibert, she goes, Dulcibert! And she says, Elphaba! And they hug. And she says, oh, I missed your bear hugs. But as she's saying it, she's like shrouded in the fur of this animal. And I was like, can we play something so this feels emotional? Can we have better lighting so that we see the two of them? Can she tear up or something? This is the one person who actually looked out for Elphaba. Just from a pediatrician's perspective, the reason why this is so important is if you've heard of adverse childhood experiences like neglect or trauma or anything like that that happens to a child, a thing that protects a child, even if they're experiencing trauma at home, is what? A non-parent grown-up who's genuinely looking out for that kid. Which, in this case, is Dulcibert. She's literally Elphaba's only rock. So you would think that when she sees her, it's equivalent to her seeing her mom, or her only family. But they didn't really make a moment out of it, so she's sort of talking to everyone about not leaving Oz, which slowly morphs into No Place Like Home, which I love what Cynthia did with it, but the song doesn't really sit with you. It wasn't directed in a sense, and I don't really like using the word directed because John M. Chu truly showed us what a mastermind he is in the first part. I was gonna say in episode 1, in part 1 of Wicked. So I just don't know if this was like a different team that was working on it, but a lot of the numbers just seem small in scope, and the staging and the blocking of it, it almost felt as though we were on a stage and they couldn't really go certain places or the camera couldn't move around them as much. And I just thought, why are we so small? The trees are hanging, it's all crowded. But most of the numbers were that way, where we were just feeling very insular and tight. She started singing. She did a great job with the singing. I like how she really optioned up with it. It's beautiful. But I don't really... Again, because at the end of the song, she's like, guys, there's no place like home. And then they all were like, that's so nice. Well, see ya. We'll be back. They just all leave anyway. Makes you really question. As for the best song, can you guess? No Good Deed. That song, Elphaba, Cynthia, crushed it. No notes. It was so powerful. And I really liked what they did visually at the very end of it because it sort of echoed back Defying Gravity. And it was sort of her stance. I'm going to make this. I have the power to do it. And again, she rose. She was flying as she optioned up and did an amazing riff and all this stuff. Wow, great. The monkeys were there supporting her. But the rest of it, again, was distracting. I don't know who had made the decisions of what we're going to look at when the musical is happening. But if you remember in Popular, a lot of things were happening in Popular, but they were very measured. She was interacting with certain objects. She was on the floor. The eye was drawn to a specific motion on screen. In a lot of these songs, there are monkeys flying, there are animals scurrying, there are people talking in the background. There's a lot of movement behind the performers. So even though Cynthia and Ariana and a lot of these people are doing an incredible job right at the camera, they might not be lit very well, or there's a lot of motion happening behind them, or it's very small in scope, and you're just like, okay, no good deed. But then by the end of it, they proved what they can do, which is they pulled back and they showed you a wallpaper of Cynthia screaming no good deed, and you're like, oh, so we are able to do it. So what was the rest of that? I liked it vocally and visually at the very end. It's a really good shot. It might be the best shot. Let me think about that. I don't know if it's the best shot of the movie, but it's one of the best shots of the movie. That final frame. Very cool. Ooh, another thing that I really liked was I was interested to see, which this is probably a point of contention because I know there are a lot of like Wicked purists out there. So I would love to hear what you think about this. How they were going to fix the whole Nessa walks problem, because in the musical she stands, which when I first saw it, I mean, I'm getting ahead of myself, but I was very thrown off that a musical in today's world would say that we're going to fix someone with a disability and then make them walk as if they're broken. And for as many people as who love Wicked, I don't find enough people talking about that part, but John Chu was like, "Oh no, we're not doing that." Like, that's insulting. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he was like, "Oh, we're not going to do that." So how did they fix it? They had a really, I mean, I thought it was really good. I don't want to speak for that audience or that community, so please chime in and let me know, let all of us know how you felt about the fix of that moment. And I thought it was respectful, but again, I would love to hear from other people. But I don't understand with this fix what they're going to do with the musical in response, because if we've done that, then, I mean, I think they also had someone who uses a wheelchair on Broadway playing Nessa, right? So like, what did they do for that moment to fix it? And I think that now that we have a new solution, will that change how the musical is being done? And if it's not, then why would the musical continue to do something that some people find problematic? That kind of stuff is very interesting, again, because it's the social commentary about our world and how it's reflected in the art that we use or consume. The thing that I found odd after that moment is Nessa is upset at Bach, and then she goes to the Grimory, and again, blocking wise, it was very odd because she goes to the Grimory, she's like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna do this bad stuff to him. So she goes to the Grimory and she's like, Elakanamanamanamana, and then Elphaba literally comes right next to Nessa, who, this is the book. The book is right here. And then Nessa's doing this, and Elphaba comes right next to her. No, stop it! Stop! Nessa, you don't know, just stop! Look, stop! And I'm like, she's physically right next to someone. Is there like some internal law that you can't, I mean, she said once it's been started, you can't stop it, but I was like, can she not use her magic powers to just close the book, or to pull the book to her, or to move Nessa out of the way? I think moving Nessa out of the way would have been disrespectful, but if she was just like, no, stop, and her hands were literally over the book, and I thought, wait, what? So then from that moment, we get another character. I don't want to spoil it for anyone who's not seen it, but with that part, you would think that they would have had a presentational trajectory when revealing what happened in that transformation, but we didn't. So when that person is transformed, they sort of have this horror break through a door and then come out, and you see them for like 2 frames in full body, and then it cuts to like them walking into frame with an axe in their hand. I would have thought that in terms of the presentation of it all, because they were trying to go for horror with like the door being chopped down, that you go to Nessa's face and then Nessa's like, and then when all you hear is ka-ting, ka-ting, But you don't see it. You just hear ka-ting, ka-ting, and she goes, Puck. And then the only thing you see come into frame first is that presentation of sing, that axe. The axe should be the first thing that you see, and then slowly pan up from the feet to the eyes. Right? Like that is how you present something. But you just get thrown the image of him because he flies out of the door, and you're like, oh, it's already like the gig is up. There's only one time to have a first impression. Just like with, remember when Elphaba, baby Elphaba, they did this too. When the little kids were making fun of her, what does she do? They have a shot of the grass. And then what happens? Elphaba steps into the grass with one foot, and then her second foot. And it's like making a moment of that. Where was the moment of the reveal for that character? It was just, here he is. And you're like, oh, because your eyes just start scanning. You're like, oh, okay, so here's this whole person, and he's talking to her, and you're still scanning. So it just is really hard and jarring for the eyes versus making it curated that you have the axe first. And that would maybe explain his anger because that was the first thing we saw with him. And it might sound a little bit nitpicky, but it happened several times, and I'll tell you a few more in a little bit. The other thing that was really just amazing and just is insane is the costuming. How they were able to do so many amazing, out of this world, true fantasy level dresses and outfits for people. And my favorite, that like bouncy dress from the salon makes a reappearance. That's all I needed. That's all I needed. As it happened, I said, there it is. I love that dress. That's that accordion thing. Oh, I referenced it in my review of Wicked Part 1. It was just the greatest thing that's ever been created ever on this planet. And then the next best thing is Glinda's blue dress that she wears to sort of fit into the Wizard of Oz story when she meets Dorothy. But it's blue with little strands of pink that kind of are, what was the word? Not evanescent. What is that word? It's la 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 la. You know the word, or like shimmers, like a mermaid. One thing in terms of costuming that was jarring is when Elphaba first meets Glinda in this movie. Glinda's in her wedding outfit. She's in full white. And then when she hugs Elphaba, Elphaba says, "Watch your dress." She's like, "Oh, okay." And then the next scene, she goes to see the wizard, and then I was gonna say Ariana. Glinda comes in, and she's in a pink dress. And then the scene after it, she's back in the white dress, and I was like, was this filmed? And just like forced in to make sense, or how did they do that, or why would she change her dress? And so the one person I was talking with after was saying that it might have been just like an overcoat, but it was the cut of the dress was completely different. So just bizarre choice, and maybe that was them forcing the story, or they realized they filmed something out of sequence. Unclear. Madame Morrible's costumes always. I mean, Madame Morrible in general was more of a plot device in this movie. She would show up when she needed to, said the things that she needed to, had amazing hair, amazing costume. She had this one bejeweled, like, emerald pattern thing. I said, wow. But you're only here for 20 seconds. So, the moment that I wish they did a little bit more with Michelle Yeoh actually was when she summoned the cyclone. Like, she was doing an amazing thing, but again, they directed her to be at, like, a window, which, remember, I don't know if you know those castles where people would shoot arrows out of, and they had those small little window slits so that they could shoot but not get shot at. That's essentially the spacing they gave her to do this. So she was like very vertical, but why couldn't she have been like in some place where the camera can spin around her? She's literally summoning a cyclone. Why couldn't she be like, and you do it in slow-mo, and with each hand stroke you see the wind follow her hand. Try to make that moment as magical again, because this is essentially your version of airbending if you wanted to do it, and you could have really gone with it. And she was doing the hand motions, but it was at a window, and her hair wasn't like moving with it. She could have had wind behind her that was flowing her and doing all this stuff, but it was just her at a window, and then the cyclone appeared outside. I think a missed opportunity. Oh, and the last thing that just really needs to be said, my favorite thing that just was on screen, or one of my favorites, was the blue horse that Fiora rides on. Were the horses speaking animals before they became part of the cavalry? I would love to find that lore out. But regardless, blue horse dude, I love that horse. That was a beautiful shade of blue. And then it also reminded me, it is Wizard of Oz, right? Where they have the different color horses that they painted. I think that's also Wizard of Oz. I remember I only watched it once. And it's recorded. You can watch that too. So that was all the stuff that was really good. Now we're going to get into the questions part. We're going to take a quick second before we get into the questions part and say, please like and subscribe. That really helps my channel get in front of other people who are interested in this kind of stuff. So you should subscribe and then also check out other things on the channel because I have a whole bunch of wicked content. Okay, the questions I have. Number one, you ready? Wasn't there a letter? Isn't that the entire setup of how they win the day? I only saw the musical once. So my understanding was that Glinda sent a letter to Elphaba, or maybe the other way around, and they decided to do this bucket challenge thing. But in this one, it I really don't know how they agreed that this was going to happen, which is one of my biggest challenges with this movie is it unfortunately doesn't exist on its own. I think that they ended up servicing the musical theater crowd and didn't really cater to their general audience. It is a PG movie. I don't know if a child could really understand that. And then also there's one moment that's really pushing the PG. Like really pushing it. But the movie itself doesn't exist on its own. I was thinking about all the people I convinced to watch part one in my life who are not musical theater fans. And they're like, dude, we're not gonna watch a musical. Dude, what? A musical theater? No, we're not gonna waste our time. I was like, please just trust me. And every single person I got to watch Wicked Part 1 loved it. Why? Because it was a great movie. It didn't matter that it was a musical. They chose to make it a good movie. The costuming, the story, and then on top of it, the music was great. Excellent. You can't be upset with something like that. This one, you had to have either watched the musical or known the story or read the book because how in the world were decisions made for them to ultimately win the day when those conversations didn't happen on screen? So that was a little jolting and disorienting because it's almost like unfortunately it's upsetting to say this and I know that it's almost like the Disney live action movies and the things that we don't like about them, where they sort of wink wink at the audience. There was a lot of that in this movie, unfortunately. That when something would happen, they would actually play a flashback from the movie, which it feels as though they didn't trust their audience to have watched the movie that is called Part 1 for the sequel. So they catered to a brand new audience, but that brand new audience they also cater to a hyper specific part of them, which is the musical theater crowd who is aware of everything. So then why are they giving you 8 flashbacks at the very least? And one of the flashbacks, they start replaying the whole musical intro of part 1, which is when Glinda says, I did know her at school. And the camera starts going away. Literally the person sitting next to me was like, what? Because we were watching that whole scene again. And then it goes, school, and we start going through it, and we're like, are we going to sit through the whole first movie again? And it goes, zoo, and she says, but wait. And the camera goes, zoo, and it comes back. That is disorienting. That is breaking the fourth wall in a way that the movie is telling you, the audience, we know we're in a movie. We know, you know, we know, you know that we know that you're watching a movie. Why would a movie do that? It was very shticky, and it didn't serve the plot because it was such a long flashback with the same cuts as movie part 1. So you're sitting there very disoriented, like, why are we reliving this? We already saw this. Why are you giving me flashbacks and not doing anything new with it? Why? The one thing that they did that was beautiful and I liked it was when Elphaba had her somber song in this one, she was watching herself singing No Good Deed. That is an acceptable flashback because that's not a flashback. You're adding something to that. But a lot of the other flashbacks were literally just watching what was already filmed in part 1. As if people didn't already watch it. So it felt like a YouTube video. It really did. Like Wicked, the YouTube video. So that was my first question. Where did the letter go? Because if there's no letter, then how did they decide on a plan? Question number 1. Question number 2, I already asked this. How much time does in fact pass between part 1 and part 2? Because they look very different. It could be the next day, except for the fact that the cub is now a full-grown lion. Other than that, everyone could have just gone to a different barber. Oh yeah, I wrote here in my notes, there is no definite time because it was just a clock tick. The number of times they said clock tick, hilarious. Hilarious to me. Like, tell me you want to make something a trend without telling me you want to make something a trend. Clock tick. I mean, it stuck, but if you're going to tell me clock tick, can you not tell me how much the clock ticked so I know where we are in this reality? Cool. Another smaller question, did Elphaba always have visions? I know in the first movie she saw Dr. Dillamond in a cage, which does come true. And then in this one, she sees Nessa in the vortex, and then she also has this premonition of her and Fiero walking on the desert land. But I didn't know if she always had that skill set, because if she did, I would want to remember how they did it in the musical. Because how does a musical show a vision of the future? That's interesting to me. Oh, yes! What happened to the dress with the pink swirl? No, no, no. What happened to the dress with the pink and green swirls? That pink dress that Ariana wears that went viral online. It looks like the cake, and it has the swirl of the green around it. Where is that dress? It didn't show up in the entire movie. It feels like there was a lot that was cut, which makes me think that maybe there were a lot of cooks in the kitchen, that we know what John Chu could do with part one, and maybe because it became so big, a lot more people became involved where he wasn't able to have his say, or maybe there's a director's cut that needs to come out. But this felt very choppy and sometimes sloppy, where you were like, what am I supposed to feel? Where is this going? Why don't we have emotional beats that are earned? We're just jumping through songs. Oh, and then also one of my questions is, which I had alluded to earlier, is where is the presentation of it all? You know you're putting something on display. I already gave you the example of the Tin Man and Dulciber. Like, make a moment out of it. And also, the line was also always playing with his tail. And the person I was watching with my friend, he was like, "Oh, that was just trying to replay the guy who did it from Wizard of Oz." But when he did it in Wizard of Oz, it was supposed to be comedic, supposedly, and they just kept on doing it here, so my friend didn't like it. I mean, I didn't really have enough awareness of that Wizard of Oz context to inform how this lion was interacting, but presentation-wise, what I really want to talk about is Fiero. This is a spoiler, so if you don't want to hear anything, please skip to this time code. Presentation-wise, what I really want to talk about is Fiero. That scarecrow moment when he kind of comes back at the end. Again, presentation. What he does is, isn't Fiero, or the scarecrow in Wizard of Oz, literally there when they throw the bucket of water onto the witch? And then he goes with Dorothy back to the wizard? So if he really loved her, why didn't he just, like, again, this is where the wicked world doesn't actually blend with Wizard of Oz as much as people like the concept. They're not in parallel. They can't be. So that's disorienting. But then when he finally does come, let's say that he went to the wizard, and then he came back after and been like, the coast is clear. How did he know she was there if she didn't communicate it with anyone? Again, that letter part is just not there. But regardless, the presentation point is they opened the trap door and she comes out and she says, Fiero, and then boom, right in your face is Fiero as a scarecrow. My audience laughed. That's not a moment to laugh at. That's literally the end of the movie. But it was just, again, not curated. Your brain just sees something flash without having a moment to process. And again, for people who've never seen the musical, it's disorienting for them, for Fiero to be that character, and then also to have to connect that it's the Scarecrow versus a moment like this. I'm not saying that this is how they had to do it, but presentation-wise. If he knew she was there, we're still going to give them the benefit of the doubt. He opens the trapdoor, and she comes out, and then maybe when he looks at her, he turns away, and she says, Fiero? And then very slowly, and he's in silhouette, and then he slowly turns. And then you see half of his face, and she reacts to it in love, in adoration, in gratitude. Thank you so much for coming for me, right? And slowly he reveals more of his face. But to just get Fiero, boom, you're like, oh, okay. Is that a mask? Why does he look so? Oh, what? Oh, he's the Scarecrow. Oh my gosh. Wait. Oh, he's gone. Wait, can we bring him back? Oh, okay. Let me study this. Oh, wow. All right. Okay. They did it in the first movie. How did they do it? Literally Elphaba. Whenever she took her hat. Ready? She takes her hat, and she always puts it on like this. and then she's covering her eyes, and then she looks up at you. That is curating. What else is curating? Elphaba with her cape. She puts it on and goes in slow-mo. Curation. That's curation. You do the presentation, things that you can only do in a movie. Yeah. The other thing that was a huge question mark is because there's no letter, Elphaba at some point, and this is a testament to the power of Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande, because regardless of what these women were doing on screen or the inconsistencies or the choices that the team has made around them, they were totally in their world. So there's one moment where Elphaba is telling Glinda to get out of here. She's like, go save yourself. She gives her the Grimory and she's like, go, go, go. And then Elphaba goes and gets a bucket and goes to the well and starts pumping the bucket. And it's so disorienting because you're like, why is she filling the bucket up? Like, where was this plan decided? Did we miss a scene? Did something happen? Regardless of what the choices were or weren't surrounding that, Cynthia was so engrossed in her character that even though I couldn't interpret why she was making that choice, I knew that Cynthia knew why she was doing that, which is such an incredible testament to her acting ability. And Ariana too. That regardless, it's almost like they were in their own bubbles and things were happening around them that couldn't impact how incredible they were shining. She was filling up this bucket, and I was like, why does she know the bucket thing? How does she know the water thing? And if we're going to say clock tick 12 times, could we not mention that the bucket is really important because she can melt with water? I think that's really important for people who've never seen the movie or the musical. Like, that's really important, everyone. We need this movie to exist on its own without Wizard of Oz and without the musical and without the book. People within this movie should have given us all the info we need to make this conclusion. No? Okay. And then another question mark I had, again, is questionable directing, was when after they decide that Elphaba tells Glinda to go, or she gives her the Grimory and says, you have to learn because people always need to believe in good, and I'll be the person that's bad and wicked so that you can shine. And she puts her in a room and closes the door. This is exactly mirroring Frozen when Anna and Elsa were at the door. Door down the middle, and they're both on each side. And I was waiting. I was like, this is the moment. Glinda puts her hand up and then puts her head on the door. And they're just both crying, and Elphaba's just there on the other side, and she's like... But as soon as Elphaba's hand went up and their hands were touching, even though they're both on opposite sides of the door and they don't really know what they're doing, it almost felt as though they told these women, act like what you would do if your friend actually did this to you. So they were acting believably. But when Cynthia's hand went up and Ariana's was still there, then Cynthia went and rested her head against the door. But as soon as Cynthia's head went to the door, Ariana's head lifted off. And I was like, oh my gosh, why did we not just direct them to do that simultaneously, where there's like this human connection, though blocked by a door, or their circumstances, you could say, as the symbolism, they're still connected as sisters. But we didn't even have that moment, which, again, is very quizzical, because then you have Ariana inside the room that she's locked in, watching the next events transpire, which end with the Dorothy shadow going like this with the broomstick, which feels very out of character for Dorothy, and campy for the moment, which, again, you're like, am I sad with Glinda? Why does Elphaba know that she can do this and convince them? Why is Dorothy happy? Am I supposed to be cheering? Like, it was very complicated, and maybe that's the point. And I think a lot of people are going to be like, that's the point. It's the complex nature of this movie. But I want you to hear, again, that as an audience member who doesn't have the context of all the people who are super fans of Wicked, it's disorienting and doesn't actually exist as a cohesive unit of a movie because it raises more questions than answers them. And we should be spending time in the intensity of a broken friendship or the victory of beating the villain. We should be feeling that, and it should be very clear what we should be feeling, rather than having people question all the missing plot points that got us to this point. We're good? Great. And then the last thing I'll say in my question part, which is part of like the things that I wish were a little bit better, which you could say are I termed it something here, but I guess you could say the wicked parts of the movie. But I don't even know what the word wicked means anymore because I thought wicked was what they called Elphaba, but then she sort of took it upon herself to redefine it. But then in this movie, when people were actually telling her to do things, then she actually did turn evil and said, "Fine, I will be wicked." And I was like, "But that is that wicked like you're reclaiming the word wicked, or are you actually going to do bad things?" It was kind of confusing because you need to have a message. Like my question for people who think that this is a very incredible act, it's like, what is the message of Act Two? I couldn't tell you, truly. Mistrust? Is it forgiveness? But the reason why I'm going to mention this last thing as my question mark is the For Good song, which is the other big moment of this movie. How do we know this? Because they changed the name of this movie from Wicked Part 2 to Wicked for Good. We're going to pause there for a split second. Do you remember Wicked Part 1? I do, because it starts off with Wicked. Excuse my shades. Glinda and Elphaba were fighting and they broke my window too. It said Wicked, and then after it said Wicked, it said Part 1. Fantastic. Really love that. This movie, it goes Wicked for Good. That internal inconsistency screams corporate to me. I understand that they changed the movie to For Good, but then movie Part 1 is called Part 1, and movie Part 2 couldn't have had a title that said Part 2, like that was an intermission or welcome back. It was literally For Good. Whatever. It's that important to them. This song. Great. This song could have been the most magical point of the whole show, to the point where it could have had all of its issues to get to that point forgiven if they really landed this. And musically, they were amazing. Again, these two women, you cannot fault them. What was really challenging about this song is when Glinda's starting, she's crying. Because she's like, this is the last time we're going to hang out together. I'm ever going to see you. And I love you. And thank you for having faith in me when no one else could. And thank you for being my friend. So Glinda's crying, and then she goes, I've heard it said that people... I'm not going to sing it for you, but that's how she starts. It was in this performance that I realized that this is a very difficult song to sing and maintain your sadness. Why? Because you're singing about things that never happened to these two characters. When a comet pulled from orbit as it passes a sun. Are they looking up at the sky and they see a comet? No. Have they done that in the past where we're going to get a flashback? No. They're just going to sing about it. Which is really bizarre because they're singing about it like these words mean something to them, which is great. They're selling the moment, but visually nothing is happening, and they're supposed to maintain sadness, but the follow-up is like a comet pulled from orbit as it passes a sun, like a stream that meets a boulder halfway through the wood. When did they see a boulder and a stream? Right? Like, you could have done a couple of different things with that. You could have had the Grimory open up and Elphaba sort of maybe giving her a tutorial or showing her what the Grimory can do, and she's maybe making this stuff happen for both of them to see. That's potentially cheesy. I agree with you. But at least it's giving them some rooted context. But the other thing that was really odd about this song is, and one thing that was noticeable throughout the movie, is the light source. I'm probably going to tell you something that's going to change how you see this scene, but I want you to take note of what I was noticing a lot is whenever these actors were on stage and they're giving it their all, the light source, I have a little candle here, was behind them. And not like behind them where it was, see, as that's behind me, it's giving me a little halo effect, right? Let me not burn my hair. Right? It's giving a little halo effect, very, very light. No, they had the light just distractingly near them. So it almost cast them in shadow throughout the movie. These actors were in shadow for a lot of the movie. Not only on sound stages, it seemed like, small scope, giving it their all, but the lighting wasn't helping them. Specifically in For Good, it starts off very gentle, and Ariana's doing an incredibly controlled part of this. I've heard it said that people come into our lives. And as she's doing this, it's literally like this. There's a torch right next to her face that's just flickering, casting shadows behind her. So I'm like, do I look at Ariana, who's dimly lit, or this torch behind her that's just flickering away, taking up all the movement? And I was like, could we not have said, pause everybody, can we just angle the camera a little bit so that, yeah, great. So then there's a reason for that light source being there, but it gives her a halo effect. I really don't want to burn my hair. But that was something that happened frequently. The other thing I thought that they could have done with this moment is, what did they choose to do to make these characters more real for us? Well, in part one, when Elphaba's literally falling to her doom, what does she do to get herself to sing Defying Gravity? I'll tell you. She taps into whomst? Her inner child. As she's falling, she sees young Elphaba. They already cast this woman. In part two, what do we see? Young Glinda, who is trying to summon and use her magic wand at her birthday party and can't do it, and she finally sees a rainbow, and they're like, did you do that? And she says, well, I've always loved a rainbow. And everyone's like, yay, Glinda can make a rainbow. We're going to get back to that rainbow in a second, but we've already cast young Elphaba, young Glinda. You mean to tell me in a song where they're reflecting on their entire lives and how much they have impacted each other, you don't have a moment where you have young Elphaba and young Glinda act out the things in front of them? You might say it's cheesy, but you're doing something new. You're heightening that number. Because what we did get is a circular camera that just went around them as they just looked at each other and sang the notes exactly as written on the page. Again, beautifully so, but because the song itself doesn't have anything to do with their story, because they've never seen a stream, they've never seen a comet, there's never a sky bird versus a land bird or a sea bird. We don't talk about that nearly enough, but I'll let that slide. The lyrics mean nothing except for, I have been changed for good. Why don't you have their young selves, just as they're singing, as they come into frame, have their young self come upstage them, or come downstage of them, if this were a performance, and then they would act out and maybe talk to each other, and they would hug each other, and you just feel that like inner child healing that they both are experiencing in the song, but you are using a new perspective. And again, everyone loves children. When you bring the children into it and you realize that they're healing their inner children, even though they didn't actually interact as children, the bond that they've created together is sister-like. It is expanding and passing the bounds of their grown-up lives and touching and healing their inner child, because she said, you're the only friend I ever had. That's so sad. That's little Elphaba saying that. You're the only friend I ever had. And Glinda says, well, I've had many friends, but only one that mattered. Like, that is so pure. Why didn't they have something to augment this moment? Especially because they filmed it at the dark castle at night with no light source except for a flickering candle that was distractingly nearby. Oh my gosh. I was telling a friend about that moment, and just it makes me cry. It makes me tear up to think that we could have had the young actresses really heal all of us. That's the power of children and what that moment could have held. Not to mention the biggest insult, which now we're in the territory of things that need to have improved. Blocking wise, friends. How do we start this song? Elphaba says, here's the Grimory. No, I could never. Please take it. You need to learn and train yourself. I'll be the bad one so you could be the good one. Thank you. By the way, you're the only friend I ever had. And you're the only one who ever mattered. I've heard it said that people come into our lives. This Grimory ends up in Glinda's hand for the totality of this song. Are you kidding me? The Grimory's a character now? It's that important? Why don't we bring the witch hat and the broom? Let's just hold all our props while we're at it. You mean to tell me she couldn't have found any moment in the song? I mean, it's not Ariana's fault, it's the blocking of this. Because then she can't even hold her sister with both hands, or hug her, because the freaking Grimory is in her hand the whole time. So why does she go, who can say if I've been changed for the better, but because I knew you, I have been changed For good. And then on for good, she leaves the Grimory. Because this is not the point. This is her seeing literally like what? Rapunzel and Flynn Rider. The whole movie is Mother Gothel is kissing the hair. Flynn Rider moves the hair out of the way, so he's like, I care about you. She finally gets the thing that she wanted, the Grimory, to prove herself, but she cares about Elphaba that much more, so she will set this aside on, I have been changed. And she grabs her hand for good. Oh my gosh, even doing that just touches me. Oh my lord, do you feel that? Please tell me you feel that. That is just missed. Then it gives them both hands to just hug or spin or just do anything. But instead we got, and none of it seems to matter anymore. I'm like, get this? Frickin' throw the Grimory. I don't care. Where's Chistery when you need him? My friend. Take it with you. Hold on standby. Is there a prop table? There's just a couple things I have left here. We've already discussed a lot of this. One comment I heard from some people after is this should have just been a 4-hour one movie. Interesting. You know, the first movie I felt deserved the 3 hours because they really fleshed out these characters. This movie's 2 hours and 18 minutes. I think they could have done a 3-hour movie if they really were going to flesh it out, but the songs are not as powerful here, which is why people thought, myself included, that the 2 new songs would be strong enough to anchor this act. They're not, unfortunately, and because everything is smaller in scope, we don't have ensemble numbers, it just feels like this could have been cut down to an hour and just tacked on to the first one. I really want to also talk about the sex scene. I felt that it was just unwarranted, because when it did happen, like, again, you're catering to a very specific audience, and maybe that's a lot of people, but I didn't think that you needed to have them do the kissy-kissy stuff, which is, you know, fine, but then the next scene, have them start shirtless, because when Nessa has her thing happen to her, Elphaba's like, oh my gosh, I gotta go to my sister. Literally, people in my audience start giggling. Why? Because they're both unclothed. So how is she gonna go to her sister when she's unclothed and she's like, I'll be back for you, and he's like, I'll be back for you, and it's like, oh my gosh, they could have been clothed for this, and then she could have sprinted off to go help her sister, right? Like, from the hammock, I have to go, right? Just go for it. But no, she had to be like, I have to go. No, you lovey-dovey, squeezy-beezy, ba-ba-ba. And then she's like, oh, how am I gonna do this? Let's crossfade. They faded into her wearing clothes. And the amount of fading in this movie was just like, we don't have the ability to actually get out of this scene, so we're just gonna fade into the next one. And fade into the next one. And fade into the next one. Oh, you remember that really sweet moment that was in the very first trailer where Glinda and Elphaba are sitting in like a rose garden and Glinda goes like this on Elphaba's shoulder? That moment is here ever so slightly. They show them going on like a group friend party, and when they're at the garden sitting down, Glinda looks at Elphaba, and then it cuts to someone else, and the next time we see them, her head's already rested. So we never actually get the moment of her head going onto her shoulder, which I thought was extremely endearing. And at the end of the movie, I don't know what compelled them, but they tried to recreate the Wicked Musical poster just for, I guess, the fans, but there's a light source behind them. She's not actually, and again, it's like, who decided that? It feels like a YouTube video from fans rather than the incredible powerhouse that the first movie was. And the last thing I'll say that truly I think a lot of people are going to catch this moment is the very final moment of the movie. They have Glinda immediately come in with comedy and tell Madame Morrible she's lost it and then all this stuff, and you're like, am I supposed to be laughing? Because I felt like we were just really, what? Okay, now we're laughing, great. Oh, crossfade. Now we can laugh because there was a crossfade. Sure. So she comes in very funny and then starts telling people what they're going to do. Fantastic. The wizard finds out that he's actually the father, and he also does this thing. Everyone in the movie starts doing this, and oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And you're like, you know, it's one thing when Glinda does it because it's within character for her, but when Glinda was also at her wedding scene and she came back and saw her wedding being devastated, she sits there and she starts crying to herself. And I think when people cry to themselves, I mean, you can help answer this. Do you also cover yourself? I feel like covering is when you're crying around someone else, but she also cried to herself. Anyway, at the end of the movie, she has her Grimory with her, and then she looks out and she sees a rainbow. And I'm like, oh wow, did she summon the rainbow? Because the Grimory was there. Is this like her first spell? And then it cuts to Elphaba walking in a desert with Fiyero, desert soundstage. It looked like the volume that they have, that 3D space. And she's literally walking and leaves Fiyero, and Fiyero goes on ahead, and she does this. She goes very specifically, like at a point, and I was like, oh my gosh, is she also seeing the rainbow? Amazing. We're back at the rainbow. because this is Glinda's childhood, but also the entire Wizard of Oz is based on this word. Fantastic. The rainbow is where we're going to end. We then see the Grimory open and starts flying to pages like, oh, it's going to land on the rainbow spell. That's what oh, okay, great. So Glinda actually did cast the rainbow. Fantastic. She does have powers. This is her first power, and this is something they're going to connect on. Great. Oh my gosh. No. Elphaba, literally, we never see what Elphaba's looking at. So then you're like, oh, is she just reflecting on Glinda, or is she giving Glinda Grimory powers from there? Okay. And I thought, okay, they're going to have at least some musical motif of somewhere over the rainbow. Nope. What they ended up doing instead was Glinda was looking out this way, Elphaba was looking out this way, and then we got them both on screen, except Elphaba was lower than Glinda. So Glinda's looking out this way and Elphaba's looking out this way. And I was like, really? At the end of the movie, when the whole thing was about these women actually being counterparts and equal, that we also put Elphaba lower than Glinda. Just like, it was the most jarring thing. It's like the editor didn't look at that moment. And I was like, is there a rainbow between them? How are they on? Okay, this again feels like a YouTube video, like split screen YouTube video. They literally could have just had a rainbow, and that could have been the thing that they both look at, and you're like, okay, and they could have ended with dun 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 dun. Right, like end on the musical motif of somewhere over the rainbow. But no, we just ended somewhere randomly. Yeah. Ariana crushed it. Cynthia crushed it. The movie, unfortunately, might have been crushed by that same house that took one of the characters out. It was entertaining. It does not live up to the first one, unfortunately. And I think that this is what people were expecting when you say, oh, this is a musical movie. And when I was telling people about the first one, they're like, oh, we don't watch musicals. I don't want to watch a musical. And then I convinced them to do it because it really defied gravity and genres and boundaries, and it set its own standard, and it was amazing and iconic, popular. What is this feeling? Defying gravity. I'm not that girl. No one mourns the wicked. All of those were carefully thought out moments in the cinematography, the choreography, the ensemble. I'm literally in a musical right now, and it's Anastasia the musical, and we're performing it in New York City, and it literally wouldn't be a show without the ensemble. Maybe they were bound by time, but then they also cut out one of the most gorgeous costumes of Glinda that they used to promo this in the poster. So it's like, where is the movie? Where is the movie that we know you guys are able to make? Was it that the editor team changed? That the directorial team? Was it that corporate got involved? Was it that too many people were involved? Was it that they used their budget and there wasn't enough money left? Did they run out of time? I'm not sure. It seems like a very different team than the first group, though there are some highlights like we had talked about. So this movie is in line with most Broadway shows, which is part 2, just like in tradition, tends to not be as good as part 1, but I hope that even though it's not as good, that people don't consider it wicked, that they might actually still consider it to be as popular as the first one, and if not, then someone's going to have to burst their bubble. And I hope that you please share your thoughts down below. If you have any answers to the questions I'd asked, please also share them. This is a very long video, but I want to give you all of my thoughts, and please stay tuned because I also recorded a song that I would love for you to check out, and in the meantime, you can check out a whole bunch of videos. I picked this one specifically for you because I think you'll like it, and I picked this one for you as well. One of them is going to be my song cover of Wizard and I. Would love to see you there, and I'll also see you in more videos if you like and subscribe for more.